And welcome to the Daily Debate. I'm David McClelland, and this evening on our panel I am joined by Sallis, Finn Beckett Hester, Alastair Sledge and Emily Atkinson. And as always, our studio audience is selected from across the political spectrum, here to challenge our panel's points of view. Today's first question: does Labour have a sexism problem? In its 116-year history, Labour has never had a female leader. Maria Miller, chair of the Women and Equalities Commission, says Labour has a significant problem attracting women into politics. So, what is Labour's problem with women? Tara.
I don't think Labour does have a sexism problem, at least relative to the rest of the main parties that we see in politics. Because at the moment, the Conservatives are the party in government, and they have about 200 more male MPs than they do female MPs. But Labour are almost 50-50 on the amount of men and women that they have elected in Parliament at the moment. I think even though Labour haven't had a female leader, I think that that's purely just by chance. The Conservatives, for example, with Theresa May at the moment, were essentially left with her because they had no other options rather than making a positive step for women. So I think the leadership issue isn't the one that you should really look at when you think about whether or not Labour do have a sexism problem, but rather how many women are they putting in winnable seats and how many of those women are being elected. And at the moment, I think Labour are actually doing a lot better than the other parties in that area.
Thank you, Tara. So there is no problem with sexism, no problem with women representation in the Labour Party. Tell me, how many women are there in the top positions in the Labour Party at the moment under Jeremy Corbyn's shadow cabinet?
I wouldn't be able to tell you an exact number, but I know he was criticised when he first came in as Labour leader for not appointing any women in his first shadow cabinet. And I think that says more about Jeremy Corbyn than it says about Labour, because the Conservatives, they have more women in their cabinet, but if you're putting almost all the women in your party in your cabinet, that doesn't necessarily represent that those women are being chosen because it's a positive step for Conservative women, but rather because it looks good. And Jeremy Corbyn received a lot of criticism from within his own party for that move and had to go back on it and appoint, in the top 4 jobs, he then appointed 2 to women. So his own party did check him on that, which shows that just because Jeremy Corbyn hasn't got the best record on women doesn't mean that Labour will let him get away with it.
Thank you. Are you aware of a petition that was signed by 45 or so Labour Party members to Jeremy Corbyn on exactly this topic about women representation in the Labour government?
Not aware of exactly what that petition was, but as I say, things that I directed at Jeremy Corbyn I don't think represent the whole Labour Party. As we've seen from the fact that his being the head of the Labour Party is so controversial, he doesn't represent the views of the whole parliamentary Labour Party and doesn't represent the views of all the Labour supporters.
You're absolutely right there, Tara. Thank you very much. Finn, do you see that the Labour Party has a problem with ladies?
I do, and I think it's an ingrained, intrinsic historical problem that is yet to be addressed. Corbyn came to power with a kind of aura of change and probably feminism to an extent. But when Corbyn came to power, he has simply made no attempts to properly address the issue, appointing a number of men in top cabinet positions whilst leaving many women out of said positions, and an overall lack of women in senior positions. It is clear that promoting gender equality is clearly not on his agenda. This isn't just limited to Corbyn, it's also other places in the party, such as Gaff-prone Owen Smith, recently tweeting about Sturgeon and how she should put a gobstopper in her mouth, speaks volumes, and on how Leanne Wood was only allowed to come onto the debate because of her gender. And I believe this is, as political banter as he called it, is truly unacceptable. And it shows not only that Corbyn has a problem with women, it also shows that other members in the party also have women. There is also evidence for this. Many female MPs took to Twitter to talk about the sexist abuse that they have witnessed. I quote Tulip Sadiq, MP. The online abuse is getting worse. There hasn't been enough condemnation from the top about this behaviour. The evidence is clear that Labour does indeed have a sexism problem. However, this issue is not exclusive to Labour. It is indeed a nationwide stigma, whereby leaders have to be seen as strongmen and hold masculine qualities. May isn't viewed as a person who isn't a man. She is viewed as a strong leader, in the same way that Thatcher was. Harriet Harman, on the other hand, a Labour MP, isn't seen as a strong politician since her focus is on feminist issues, which half the electorate aren't that concerned with. The current political system shuts out female candidates who are unwilling to fit into the strongman template.
Thank you very much indeed, Finn. Emily, I want to put this to you now, if I may. Tell me about your thoughts on Labour Party's attitude towards women.
I think the problem with the Labour Party's attitude towards women is they believe that by acknowledging the problem, it will automatically be fixed. The problem is not necessarily with Labour, but with the attitude towards women in general in politics.
So it's not just a Labour Party problem. This is across the political
problem. It's across the whole party spectrum. But then you have to raise a question: if we're focusing on Labour, is that too late? Is it more important to look at getting young girls into politics than focusing on once they're already women, once you've already got the roles? Is it more of a stigma towards women in general than a stigma towards women in the Labour Party?
But does this not also speak of a much wider problem with regards to engagement of youth with political agendas as a whole? You know, we have struggled to find younger people getting involved, getting politically active, whether it's male or female.
Absolutely. And if you actually look at the recent referendum, you can see that by talking to the whole public, that young people are getting more involved. When you acknowledge young people and bring them in and talk to them on their level, they are involved in politics.
We'll be coming back to the EU referendum very shortly. Thank you very much, Emily Atkinson. And finally, on our expert panel, Alastair, tell me about what you think about women and the Labour Party. Is there a problem there?
I think the idea to say that there isn't a problem with the leadership and that simply the fact that there hasn't been a female leader of the Labour Party just to be a case of chance is quite ridiculous. This summer, there were three main elections in the Labour Party. There was the leadership election, the deputy election and the nomination process for London Mayor. The leftmost candidate won in the leadership election, Jeremy Corbyn, and he got 59% of the vote. And that's generally been how people have taken it, that people wanted a fresh start. They wanted a hard left candidate who seemed like a nice guy to lead the party into a new era. But then you look at the deputy leader election and you'd think that that would mean that the leftmost candidate would win in that election. But it wasn't. Angela Eagle came last. No, she was fourth, sorry, and was beaten by Tom Watson, who was a man significantly to her right. And then in the London mayoral race, you look at Diane Abbott, who is Corbyn's, well, closest political ally, probably, and she only polled 16% in the race. So how could it be that in the same summer, when voters went for a new face in the leadership because of the hard left politics that they were attracted to, how could they not do the same in the London race? And how could they not pick the leftmost candidate in the deputy leader race?
Yeah, it's interesting, don't you find, and I'll just put this final point to the panel as a whole, see who wants to pick up on it. The Tory party have had 2 female leaders. UKIP, of its, I think, 5 leadership contenders, 3 of them were women, and a woman eventually ended up winning that part. Why is it that we haven't seen this competition within the upper echelons of the Labour Party? Why is that?
If I may?
Yes, Emily.
I would say that the problem is not necessarily whether it's left or right politics, but just that moment at time and the chance that it happened. If you actually look at the election of Theresa May, her main contenders all dropped out. Her main contender in general, Boris Johnson, dropped out. If you look at the UKIP election, the main contender also dropped out. I don't think it was necessarily hard right, hard left politics, but more just in general chance at that moment in time.
Thank you very much for the thoughts of our expert panel here. Time to hear what our studio audience makes of the question of, does the Labour Party have a problem with women? I want to go to Joe, first of all. Hello, Joe. What's your take on ladies in Labour?
I thought I'd pick up on something that Finn mentioned, that's the issue of sort of online abuse, because if you remember back when Angela Eagle was still standing and challenging Jeremy Corbyn's leadership, she dropped out because she couldn't cope with abuse she was getting. Some of that was sexist. I think that's really important because that means that the Labour Party's own members are attacking possible leadership candidates based on their gender. And I think when we consider if a party has a sexism problem or not, we have to consider the actual party membership, not just the people in the upper echelons of leadership. And I think that the abuse suffered by Angela Eagle and, as Finn said, so many other female Labour MPs on the internet is sort of more symptomatic of something, a more deeply rooted problem within the party that gets ignored if you just focus on the parliamentary party and leadership.
So are you talking then of a divide between the party membership and the parliamentary Labour Party? And there are some big divisions there, as we've been seeing, particularly during the Jeremy Corbyn saga. Is that exacerbating this issue? Is this, in a way, mirroring this sexism issue within the Labour Party?
Well, of course, I'm not saying that all sort of Labour members are sexists. Obviously, the internet is quite a powerful tool, and the anonymity that it gives means that they can abuse people freely. I don't believe that there is so much of a divide between the party members and the party leadership. It's just that the party members on the internet have that anonymity to make these comments, and I think that's a problem that needs to be stamped out, and the leadership could do more to address that.
Thank you very much, Joe. Put the same question over to Hannah. It's good to hear from a lady in the audience as well. Hannah, what are your thoughts on the Labour Party and women?
I strongly believe that looking at leadership as just in general, I think it's very strange that we have seen women leaders from Conservatives and now UKIP as well. It's very strange to see that we still haven't had one from Labour, and I think it's truly unfair that if it really was equally represented between women and men throughout the party from the bottom in the more general roles, surely then we'd see a more equal and probably a women representative in the higher roles as well. Very
quickly, Hannah, just tell me what you think of all women list, all women short lists. Is that fair? Is that anti-democratic?
I'm not exactly sure.
Or Joe, if you want to pick up on that point, this whole concept of all women shortlist, is this a good thing?
I'm not a fan of that concept because I feel it undermines women's achievements. I feel like if a woman gets a position in Parliament or in a cabinet because she is a woman, people will sort of, maybe not to her face, but behind her back, talk about how she only got it because it's a woman, undermining the fact that she probably has just as many skills and as much intelligence as the men in the same jobs.
I'm going to have to stop you there, Joe. Thank you very much indeed to our audience. Thank you very much to our panel. We will be back after the break for more of the Daily Debate. Don't go away.